All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for joining today's webinar. Before we begin, I have a couple quick housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded and we'll be sharing a copy of that recording via email about 1 hour after the session ends, so keep an eye out for that. Second, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. That said, feel free to submit your questions in the chat at any time and we'll make sure to address them at the end. Now I'd like to introduce Sean, who will be leading today's webinar, and I'll go ahead and hand it over to him to get us started.
Thank you so much, Delilah, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. My name is Sean McMahon, and I'm the Director of Intacct Sales at the RAND Group. And today we're here to talk to you about Sage Intacct and why it's such a great fit for healthcare organizations. By way of full disclosure, healthcare is an industry that is very near and dear to my heart. My stepdad was an oncologist. My mom started as an RN and then later on managed an ambulatory surgery center. In fact, my first job was working in the billing office. I also had stops in materials management and medical coding departments. Kind of an embarrassing story, but I'll go ahead and tell it to you guys because we're all friends. They had aspirations that I would follow them into the medical field. They had me sit in on a biopsy. And once they started to cut, I turned green. I had to be helped out and pretty much killed that dream for my parents. But I definitely grew up around this stuff. And that's why it's so important for me to be able to talk to you about this today and for me to share a solution that we believe can really help you out. So we want to start today by talking about a little bit about some of the things that we see going on in healthcare in 2026. We've seen in our research a bit has gone down by 2.5% industry-wide over the last 5 years. Now that's cumulative. That's not per year, but that's still a pretty significant amount. We've also seen declines over the past year in Medicaid and ACA enrollment. Couple that with a 7 to 9% increase year over year, and that is a yearly amount. And overall, and that's year over year in medical and pharmacy costs. And overall, you have an environment of slower growth and increasingly tight margins. None of this is probably news to you, but I think it's important to take a sober look at where things are at. So in response to those numbers, we're starting to see certain trends emerge. Cost control has become increasingly important. There's an increased focus on budgeting and planning because managing every dollar becomes that much more critical. Companies are moving to either reduce or reallocate their full-time employees. There's a trend towards negotiating supplier contracts across multiple entities as opposed to on an individual basis. And there's also been a movement or a trend towards paying clinicians on a performance basis as opposed to just a set amount. That's also for providers. We're also seeing some trends as far as data is concerned. Really what kind of boils down to is a commingling of financial and clinical data. Really, that commingling enables companies, healthcare organizations to get a feel for the true cost of patient care. They're looking at different KPIs that might be measured by patient, referral, clinic, specialty, department. There's a lot of different ways of slicing that data. We're also seeing a lot of organizations exploring new revenue streams and new business models like memberships or other different ways of organizing and structuring their business. I'm sure it'll be no surprise to you guys that private equity and management service organizations are becoming increasingly prevalent. PE ownership remains strong. MSOs are prevalent across all specialties. And at this point, nearly 80% of all healthcare organizations involve some form of private equity or MSO situation. Another trend that we're seeing that we think is really interesting is the evolution of the role of the CFO. CFOs are no longer just spitting out reports, no longer just managing the numbers. They're being asked to take on more of a strategic and forward-looking role. And that is also kind of dovetailing into a new career trajectory that we're noticing for a lot of CFOs, where it's not a position where you get into that CFO role and that's kind of where you stay. We're seeing a lot of them eventually transition into the CEO role. And we think that's a really interesting career path and an interesting career evolution for a lot of CFOs. So that's kind of the state of things. And in response to these prevailing winds, we want to start to talk about a solution that can address some of these trends and position you to take advantage and not get left behind with the way that the industry is moving. In this case, that solution is Sage Intacct. So when we talk about why Intacct is a great fit, we want to focus on three main categories. First and most obvious is reporting. You can consider the reporting for your organization like the EKG readout on your company's heartbeat, to use a medical analogy. And it's just as important as an EKG in determining your company's overall health. And Intacct is really especially equipped to help with this. It comes just out of the box with some pre-canned financial, operational, compliance, outcome, performance reports. A lot of these things are already built in and will be there from day one as soon as we start to import your company's data. Intacct also comes equipped with tools to help manage multi-entity, multi-currency. And when we talk about multi-entity, it's also some tools in there that can help manage different ownership models, whether you are partially owned, whether it's fully owned, whether there's multiple people within those different entities as part of your organization. Intacct has some great tools to help manage all that. It also comes equipped, kind of baked into the product, some visibility into business intelligence, and also real-time dashboards that can be either a report or a collection of reports or different things that are staged in different ways that make sense for the way that you need to go through and go about your day and look at the information that you need to look at. There's also a lot of process improvements that are built into Intacct, specifically when we talk about automation and AI, which are two things that are basically on the tip of everybody's tongue when they're looking at a new software system. And all of these things help to improve productivity. I'll show you what those look like in a minute. Intacct also has something that I think is really neat in that it contains point-and-click customization and configurability. Basically, the ability to go through, move things around, rearrange things in order to make the most sense of the way that you need to go about your day and see the information the way that you need to see it, all to help set up a flow that makes sense for you. There's also the innate and inherent ability to build out workflows, different ways of keeping things moving through your organization, be that purchasing or AP, AR. There are approvals that we can build through not only to make things move more efficiently, but also give you visibility into where the log jams are. There's also some healthcare specific functionality that I'll talk about in a second that I think is really important. And finally, kind of the third tent pole that we're looking at when we look at these things, reasons that Intacct is a great fit is the technology. Everybody asks about Open API because we have all these different systems that we work in, different information that's in all these different silos, and we need it to fill into the accounting platform. Intacct has a way that we can integrate those systems so that these are automated, either through setting up an import or just automatically bringing that system into your data. And this is because Intacct is built as a true cloud solution, which means that you no longer have that responsibility for maintaining your data, maintaining a server where your accounting system has to live. All that's in the cloud now. That's part of Intacct's easy scalability, which means that it's not just a solution for you today, but can be a solution that grows with your organization and evolves as you add on new practices or bring on different companies. Intacct can easily scale with you. And all of this just serves to take some of the burden off your IT team. They have a ton of different things that they're already managing. Systems are growing increasingly complex, and anything that we can take off their plate to allow them to focus on security, to allow them to focus on pulling information from other systems. We can really take some of that burden off of their hands. So really, just overall, there's a ton of tools within Intacct that help make it a great fit for a modern healthcare organization. But you don't need to take our word for it. The HFMA, or Healthcare Financial Management Association, peer-reviewed Intacct, and 100% of the respondents agreed or strongly agreed that Sage Intacct met the needs of the reviewers. And we look at this as a really important designation because it's not just us touting our own accolades. This means that Intacct has been vetted and found to be a great solution by people just like you, people that are sitting in your seat. Intacct also has some key solutions that are built out specifically for the healthcare industry. Things like Advanced Audit Trail, which is basically a tool that tracks every action that touches any form of patient information, and that helps ensure HIPAA compliance. In fact, when you purchase the Advanced Audit Trail functionality, Sage will even sign a waiver saying that we're guaranteeing that your patient's information is secure and that we are HIPAA compliant. There's also EMR Connect, which can help to automate the integration of key EMR data into Sage Intacct. And so, there are things like patient visits or number of beds, lots of different things that is data that's living in your EMR, but isn't actionable right now. With EMR Connect, we are able to automatically bring that data into your Sage Intacct system. It will hit what we call a statistical journal, which means it's not financial data. It's not going to affect any of the financial numbers. But then when you bring that information in, now you can start to do computations. You're not going to have to take that information, plug it into Excel, and then bring the information over from your financial reporting and make it all work together with a formula, because formulas are dangerous. It's really easy to fat finger something or change something. We want to get you out of the Excel distance as much as possible. So we can do all those computations within the system by bringing it in from the EMR Connect platform. There's a couple other things that I think are really neat. I told you before, I worked in the material management department at my mom's surgery center, so this is kind of something close to me, but there's clinical e-procurement and supplies inventory. And these are two different things, but they dovetail together nicely. And so basically, when you run out of something, you can create the purchase order within Sage Intacct. You stage it. If you need to go through approval before the purchase is made, we can build out that workflow. And then there's an automatic punch out once it's ready to go that will punch out to your key vendors. And we've seen it work with McKesson, other places that you would need to order, your surgical equipment or surgical supplies. And then once it's received, you receive it with Intacct. You can assign it to, a place in inventory, and then you can keep track of it. And that's where supplies inventory comes in, because it gives you tools to efficiently manage all that consumable inventory, specifically, things like gloves, steri strips, masks, all those things that we use a lot of, don't always keep track of, but are absolutely critical to being able to run a healthcare organization. And so I love that those tools are there, and I love that that's part of the platform. I'll show you a brief look at what those look like in a second here. And finally, there's the inclusion of Copilot, an AI technology. And I know AI is a burning topic for everybody out there, but it's here, and we need to learn how to use it, and we need to learn how to help it make us more effective at our jobs. Intacct has been really thoughtful. They're at the forefront of a lot of things AI related. And so they built it into a couple things, one of which is close automation. Basically, it's a set of tools that will go through and start to automate that monthly or quarterly or yearly close in order to keep track of everything, make sure everybody's staying on task, assign out tasks. Can also provide a narrative to the final closing reports so that you don't have to build it out yourself. You may take what the AI spits out and say, okay, well, I need to tweak this a little bit in order to completely put out that narrative, but it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you on that. There's also something called GL outlier detection, which will review any GL transactions, and we can set thresholds or tolerances in it. And if something is outside of those thresholds or tolerances, it'll notify you. It doesn't mean that you automatically won't approve it, but it does mean that it gives you the tools to quickly find these things, make decisions, and act on them. There's also AP automation. I think Intacct's AP automation is kind of unique because there's probably about 15,000 customers worldwide that are using Sage Intacct's AP automation. Every one of them is feeding information every time they review and say, yes, this is good, or no, this is bad. The way that information has been reviewed, it's sending it back. And so you are not only giving others the benefit of the work that you're doing to say yes or no, that this was scanned correctly, you're also getting the benefit of all those other 15,000 customers and the work that they're doing reviewing invoices. And as time goes on, this platform is only going to get stronger. So I'm really excited about that for a lot of reasons. And there's just a lot of other places that are built in, and I'll show you a little bit of what that looks like, but just wanted to get you excited because I think you should be excited. There's a lot of things that are in here that are really tailored exactly for you, exactly for healthcare organizations. And we would love to walk you through a little bit more of that. So I spent some time talking to you about Sage Intacct. Now I'd like to spend a little bit of time showing you a few things just at a really high level. And so I'm going to open up my instance of Sage Intacct and start to talk to you about it. So this is kind of a common screen that I go to every time I open up Intacct because I think it makes a lot of sense. This is my landing page, and it helps me illustrate a few things and a couple of core concepts. It doesn't mean this is necessarily what your landing page would look like. We can set it up so that you open up to a customized dashboard, and I'll show you what those look like. But just wanted to give you a feel. You know, I'm viewing this in Chrome because that's my default internet browser. Doesn't mean that it's yours. It just means that we can work in Chrome, we can work in Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge, we can work in Safari, Firefox. I'm sure there's others out there that I'm not aware of. Netscape Navigator, if you're still working on an old school machine. The point is that it's browser agnostic. It's going to work with any of those, and that's really nice because you don't need to change your systems. As long as you can access the internet from your station or from your tablet, anywhere that you have internet access, you have the ability to get into Sage Intacct. So it really frees you up to be able to work anywhere, anytime, any place. Other things that I like to highlight while I'm just in this landing page, just kind of going through it. I have the ability to favorite things. I haven't favorited anything in this demo image, but I can put anything in here that I come to frequently, like if I have a recurring invoice that I have to use frequently, I could stage it here, or reports that I go to frequently. I can also bookmark any of these things. So that it gives me different ways to get through the system and just navigate it the way that I see fit. Another thing that I like to point out while I'm here is that Intacct has the ability to contain all of the entities. So there are 3 entities as part of this organization. I can look at all of them right here and easily get into it, or I can just look at things at the top level, which means that you automatically have some consolidation going already right off the bat. And the nice thing about having all of these companies within the single instance means that I can go ahead and, with your help, with your input, our team, we can all work together to build out that inter-entity account mapping, which means that if you have any inter-entity transactions, multi-company transactions, anything that crosses streams within the multiple organizations that you have in your company, or the multiple entities that you have in your organization, however you have it structured, we can go through and build it out so that we're automating those do froms. There will be an eliminations journal that will track all those eliminating entries, but you don't need to do those. The system will automatically do it for you. That's really nice, and that's a big time saver. Other things that I like to point out while I'm here is that you'll notice there's help and support. I want you to keep an eye on this, and as I move through screens, you'll notice that it's contained in multiple places throughout the system. There's a lot of things. Basically on every page in the system, you can find help and support. And it can either be specifically help on the page that you're on, which, you know, on the landing page isn't going to help you that much. But there are a lot of things that are built in for you to be able to get help so that you don't need to reach out to a consultant if you run into trouble, if you forget how to do something. You don't need to pour through a manual. You're able to get help specifically on the page that you're at. And I think that's a really helpful function. Saved a lot of people that we work with a lot of time. Another thing that I like to point out is there is a help center so that you can go out to the greater help center and find information if you want to go through an FAQ or anything like that to help you get the information you need. There's Sage University, which is basically an on-demand video library that will go through and walk you through how to do specific things on specific topics. Or there's search help, and this is using Copilot. So with Copilot, we do have an AI chatbot that's built in the system. And I'm going to illustrate how that works in a second, but I want you to pay attention to that as I go through. You'll notice that we see this on every screen. And didn't mean to do that, but that's okay. There's a couple other things that I want to show you before we get into all that, but just wanted to walk you through the general navigation first. So I'm going to use one of my bookmarks in here and go through some of the things that I think are very important. And we'll open it up to edit this one just so you can see. So this is where I think this is really important. This is probably the most important concept that I'm going to go through as it relates to understanding how Intacct is different. It works similarly to like a QuickBooks in that it uses what is called dimensions. It's also similar to NetSuite. It's really just categories, or taking your pivots that you might have in a spreadsheet and bringing them in the system. It also means that when we do a migration from an older system, say Sage 100 or QuickBooks, this is an opportunity to clean up that chart of accounts, streamline it. We're really only concerned about your main account. be it 3, 4, 5, 6 digits, how many ever many digits it is, that's our primary concern. All of these subledgers, anything behind that first dash or period, comma, those go away. Not that they're no longer being tracked in the system, meaning that we're just not really considering them part of the chart of accounts anymore. So I think that's an important concept to get your head around. We can go through and select any of the ones that we need to select. I can just start typing. It'll give me the same, it'll break it down to the same thing. And I can do that for any of these categories. But once we've gotten to the main accounts, we've cleaned out that chart of accounts, then we want to look at the subledgers that you have. What do those constitute? Do you have multiple locations? Say you have multiple clinics in the same area, then location would be important. We've got department in here. Well, department could be multiple things. It could be, we've got facilities, we've got materials, or we could look at department as different lines of practice, or both. We're not limited in the way that we use these. It's just a way to divide things up. And so, maybe we use location for specific clinics, and we use department for different lines of practice, regardless of how we separate it out. And we've got channel in here. Maybe that's our lines of practice. A lot of the different things that we can do with that. The point is that by using these categories, that means when I go to separate out my reporting and I just want to report on a specific practice or a specific department or a specific location, it makes it much easier for me to do it. And we're not just limited to those. There's actually a whole lot of other dimensions that we can use. We can track things to an employee, where else we have it, projects or grants. If you are a nonprofit health center that works off government grants, we have ways of tracking that as well. Just a lot of different things we can tag as we're going through to make sure that this is as accurate as possible, that it's replacing that full chart of accounts that you had before in a much more streamlined fashion. We can also do any allocations that we need to right here. There's also a more robust allocations model that we consider more of like a period and true up, a lot of different things we can do. We can also, within any transactions, also within any vendor fields or within, those projects or grants, if you have them, we can do attachments. So you don't need to worry about an outside document management repository. We can bring all the attachments in. That means that lives with it. If this is going to go through an approval workflow next, every person that reviews that as part of that approval workflow is going to get that attachment and be able to use that as part of their decision-making process. So wanted to pause to take a breath because I just said a lot of words really fast. But next I'm going to move on from this journal entry to something that I hope is a little bit more visually exciting. And that is going to be Intacct's dashboards. And I'm going to switch from this instance to a more healthcare related one, because I think this is where you're going to start to see some of the real value that we can bring in the course of, just moving you over to Intacct. So this is a quick start dashboard. This is one that is available once again right out of the box, and it's something that we can manipulate and configure and customize, curate to make you see exactly what you need to see. But you'll notice that we have some healthcare metrics that are built in here. And so if we have that EMR Connect that's pulling down data from your EMR, we've seen it integrate with some of the big ones like Athena, Epic, a lot of them, Point Click Care. If you're more in the skilled nursing, there's just a lot of different EMRs that it's able to integrate with. We're really just pulling the information in and staging it, and it's automating the job, and we can control how often that information is being pushed in. And so if you need to see it every day, every 8 hours, we have the ability to set that up for you. And that opens up metrics like you see here in these healthcare metrics. So if we want to look at average revenue per patient, easy enough for us to do that as long as we're pulling in that patient information from the EMR. We'll look at how many units are available or beds available, beds occupied, etc. All of these are things that we can look at and get quick insight to if we set the EMR Connect and have the proper dashboards. I think it's also important to take a look at some other dashboards that we can bring into play. And we have these set up for a lot of different types of healthcare organizations. But if we're to take a look at long-term care, gives you another look at a different way that information can be pulled in. We may need to filter this out to different locations, but we have a lot of different ways that we can look at dashboards in order to get you the information that you need. One of the other ones that I had wanted to take a look at really quick, just as we're going through, because I think this is an important one, deals with the ambulatory surgery center. Once again, that's one that is important to me. But we can build out all these things. So if you need to stage your profit and loss, you need to stage any of these things, we can put all of these things in here. There are also role-based dashboards, which I think are extremely important. Let me switch back to this one because I know this one's got the information that I want here. But say you're a controller. We've got something for you. That controller dashboard is already built out. We've got information in here that we can go through and take a look at. If you just need to look at your cash balance trend, that's all put, and it doesn't mean you lose the ability to get into it. If I need to take a look at any of these reports, these are all built out. We also have one that is built out for more the CFO role. There's lots of ones that have already been built that we can easily put together, take a look at, and if it doesn't quite fit what you need to look at, then we can go through, work on it, and make it fit. So there's just a lot of different things that we can do, and if we need to drill down in on any of these numbers, we have the ability to go through. I can take a look at as much detail on any of these numbers as I need to, and we've got a lot of information in here, and theoretically you can get all the way back to the transaction level, just like we looked at on that journal entry screen that I was just on. So there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of different things that we can do with dashboards. So you're probably wondering, okay, that's cool, but where did this information come from? Well, I can tell you. The information came from the reports. Intacct has a lot of reports that are built in. And actually, let me show it to you here, because I think this may be a little bit more relevant to you. But if we go into the reporting center, you're going to see the things that are fueling those dashboards. So you may have noticed that some of these titles appeared on that last dashboard. But these are things in here that are specifically built. Anything that you see that has set means that this was a healthcare edition. So there are things that are built in, they're specifically related to healthcare. We can easily take a look at any of these reports if we want to take a look at them and pull them up. But I think what's more interesting to me, what I think is going to be more relevant to you, because you know what a report looks like, is the ability to edit and say, okay, I can take any of these, I can easily edit it. But I can also say, well, hey, theoretically, what if I didn't know how to get to that part? Well, I can go into the Copilot search help and I can say, Copilot, how do I edit a report? And while that's spinning, it's thinking, it's analyzing the way that I asked that question, because it's going to get to know me as it gets better. And I will give this thing feedback, this search bot, as I go along. So it tells me exactly where I need to go. Okay, I'm in the report center. Navigate report, locate the report you want to edit, and select the edit option. I don't need to go through this step by step, but you see what I'm saying. If I didn't know how to do it and I wanted to put short on hand on how to do it, I could either go through the help on this page, or I could just ask the search bot. And then I let it know, hey, yes, that was helpful. So it will help me more efficiently in the future by giving it that feedback. I think that's one of the really neat things. It's a very simple, rudimentary feature, a simple, rudimentary way to use AI. But it's also incredibly effective. And I think a lot of people that get scared of AI aren't really thinking about the ways that it can make their life simpler and make them better at the things that they need to do. Anyway, I wanted to get down off my soapbox and let's talk about editing a report, because that's why we originally started in here. This is a built-in report writer. This isn't a separate thing you need to use. It's not a separate report writer that you might want to use, like BizNet or F9 if you're still using one of those. This is something that's integrated. It's already built in the system, and it's really easy to use. So I can go through, I can change the title, I can change where I got the report from. I can also change who this might be for. So we can build out different audiences. And by building out those audiences, we're getting different levels of detail. Your board doesn't necessarily need to see everything down to the transaction level, like your CFO might want to look at things. So you can really think about the level of detail that needs to be in these different reports that you're producing and build them out for specific audiences. And I think that's very neat. It also means that when you're going through, you're building out these reports with that audience in mind, you can also adjust the level of detail here, but having selected that audience is going to do a lot of the work for you. Within here, I can easily change what I view in those reports. I can, expand or collapse things as I see fit. I can set these to always display. I can set the detail level. It's set as summary now because the audience I selected, but we may want to, for specific things, go through and adjust that detail level because, hey, we know that they're going to be paying particular attention to salary wages. We can go through and make that more detailed, or we can say, hey, salary and wages, we want to keep some of that information confidential. So maybe that's something we decide to just do in summary. There's a lot of flexibility about how you can set up that reporting. From here, you can go through and do your columns. This one only has a couple, but you may want to expand that out and make additional ones. I can go through and make adjustments. We talked earlier about those statistical counts, bringing information in from the EMR, and really basically all of that enables the different things you might want to do. And you can use those statistical accounts, build those computations right into your report, and there's just a ton that you can do in there. If I need to make filters, like I don't want all departments, or maybe I just want to create a group of departments because that's how I need to see that report. We have the flexibility to do so here. You can go through and format things however you see fit, or what I think is actually a pretty neat feature is I can just go and steal the format from a previous report so that I can make sure that all my reports look uniform. And I think that's a really nice thing to do. That's kind of a quick shortcut. If I need to add any kind of notations to add context to my report, I have the ability to do so here. If I need to add any additional permissions, say I wanted to make it available to a specific group of people, not just everyone, or I want to specifically exclude people because there's information in there that I don't want them to see, I have the ability to do so. And then from there, I kind of have a decision tree where I can do different things depending on what I want to do. I can add this so it will appear in my favorites right here. In fact, let's go ahead and do it. Now, I might need to refresh in order to do that. It will be there the next time I come in, I promise. I can add it to a dashboard. I can schedule it so it'll run on the 5th of every month, for example. Or I can take that a step further and say, well, this is part of a board package, so I'm going to include that in that reporting group. And then I want the board package to automatically run on the 5th of every month. Or I want it to automatically distribute to a group of people. There's a lot of different things that we can do with these reports in order to publish them out and get that information out to the people that need to see it. Okay, so just wanted to cover that really quick. There's a couple of other things that I want to cover in the time that we have available. I know that we've got about 10 minutes left, and I do want to make sure that there's an opportunity to take any questions. I'm going to speed through some of this, but we always have the opportunity to further the conversation later if you see anything that you'd like a little bit more information on. So, like I said, gonna speed through a couple things. One is the projects. I just wanted to quickly pull up a dashboard that shows you a little bit about what those projects look like, because I think this is actually probably the most important single, the most important single dashboard that we have, or single dimension that we have in Intacct. The project just operates so much flexibility, and so that we consider it's not just like if you have like construction going on, you need to be able to track work in progress. It'll do that, but basically we're creating these little mini cost centers, and I think that that's so crucial because within projects, now we'll just pick one here at random. The ability to have these little mini cost centers and to be able to go through, put demographic information about that project in, track it, to have all that revenue and expense, tracked to one place, which means if we need to look at profitability, and it's so malleable. Like we had a professional sports tour that all of their little tournaments that they had, we used the project dimension to be able to track profitability of those, and we were able to bring in sponsor information. We were able to use their sponsors and create those as projects. So every sponsor, we can see how much bang for their buck they're getting out of those sponsors. We've seen it used by trade associations for publications. We've seen non-for-profit healthcare use it to track grants. And this is all the different types of information that we can store just within this. We can produce a Gantt chart out of it because we have the ability to assign tasks. We can put any estimates in there that will serve as that project's budget. We can add specific employees and resources. There's a ton of information that we can store in here. We can store documentation. It's a really malleable dimension, really malleable aspect of Intacct, and I think it's important. So it may not be immediately relevant to you, but I'd love to be able to have you challenge us to see if we can find a creative way to make it useful for you guys. And so I wanted to touch on that really quickly. No, it's not directly healthcare related, but I just wanted to touch on it because, like I said, I think it's such a neat thing. And so if we're going to turn our head now to some of the other things that we have available, we've got supplies inventory and clinical e-procurement. And so I wanted to touch on that e-procurement first. Let me do that. And so, we have a list of suppliers that I've built out. I've only got one in here, but I can go through and I can either have this triggered by a purchasing workflow, or I even have the ability to go through. It will do the punch out for me. It takes a minute to work through this, but I wanted to show you in real time so it's not just smoke and mirrors. This is actually something the system can do. So it'll punch out to an external website. And like I talked about, this is just one that's staged for dummy data because I don't want to actually make a purchase. The company will not let me expense things like that. And so I really just want to be able to show you what this would look like. But I can go through, add this to the cart. And once I've checked out of the cart, it will spit out a purchase requisition. I'll come back in here, and then I will have a purchase requisition. And then basically it will appear in these transactions. And so once I've gone into these are all things that I've gone through and already checked out. This spawned from a requisition, then I have a purchase order. I can go through and associate these things. There's a lot of things that I can track. But once I've gone through that process, I've gone through and received it, then I have the ability to do inventory control within the system. And so, like I said, this isn't something that we're going to want to do on a large scale. I don't know if we want to necessarily do this for drugs. It has the ability to do so. But if we just need to track certain things, like I mentioned, the box of gloves. We've got different types of gloves because I know there's different types of gloves for different situations. We've got all these, so I know how many I have on hand. I can, like I said before, I can set in tolerance levels, so I know I have to automatically reorder, and I'll get a little alert when I know that one is running low on stock. I know how many have been issued. I know where they're at. I know the price. I know who's requested them, and I know the status of those requests. And just a lot of different ways that we can track all of this information within the system. I already talked about EMR Connect. I think the last thing that I wanted to touch on in the last 50 seconds I have before we break for questions is that what you see in the system today isn't the limit of what the system is going to be like even 3 months from now. Intacct has quarterly releases, and this last one that just came out, you can see all the different things that have come out. And it's not just bug fixes. It's not just, putting gloss on an existing system. There's a lot of different things that we can go through and that set up for you. But you see things like different functionality, different ways to track construction in progress, close analytics. So this is an AI tool that is going to work in hand with that close automation, identify patterns, bottlenecks, opportunities for improvement. It'll do analysis on the closing that it's just help you automate. There's line level approvals for purchasing, finance, intelligent agent. So basically you will be able to talk to that chat bot, just like I had showed you earlier, and ask it questions about the data that you're seeing, and it will spit out results. You may want to double check those things. It'll get better with time, but just, I think, speaks to the constant improvements that Intacct's putting into the platform. And that's why I'm really get excited about talking about this specifically to people like you guys, because, like I said, this is near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to pause now and see if we had any questions.
Yes, thank you, Sean. So moving into the Q&A portion of the webinar, as a reminder, if you haven't already, feel free to submit any questions that you may have in the chat. We do have a couple, so I'll start with the first one. I think you did mention or touch on this one, Sean, but the first question is, how does Sage Intacct support compliance requirements like HIPAA?
Yeah, oh, sorry about that. I didn't mean to switch that over. Well, we can leave that here. So in terms of supporting things like HIPAA, there is the advanced audit trail, which is basically a set of tools for tracking who has access to patient information once it enters the accounting system. Intacct can't be held accountable for information that lies outside the accounting system, but anything that's coming into the accounting system, any type of patient information, if we're tracking things by specific patient, if that's coming in, there needs to be tools in there to track who's touched that information, to manage who has access to it. And so Advanced Audit Trail has all those built in. And like I said previously, when you sign up for Advanced Audit Trail, Sage will sign a letter certifying that they've gone through once the implementation is completed, and once they know that everybody's trained on it, saying that we certify that as long as you stay within these specific parameters, that this data is HIPAA compliant and that we've managed it correctly. And so, yeah, there's absolutely stuff that we can talk about more that can aid towards HIPAA compliance.
Thank you, Sean. The next question is, how long does a Sage Intacct implementation typically take?
So this is kind of a moving target, and want to be cognizant of the fact that not all organizations are the same. But what we usually look at as a baseline is 3 to 4 months. And so we've seen companies take as long as 6 months, but that was somebody that had 300 different entities, and there was partial ownership on those entities. It was for a home health organization. And so through the course of that, there was a lot to build out. But for most standard companies, anything I think 20 entities or below, 3 to 4 months is a pretty good time frame, and that includes initial project design. It includes mapping out the chart of accounts, migrating data, configuration, training, and post go live support.
So the next question is, are there any specific types of healthcare organizations that would not be a good fit for Intacct?
I'm sure that there is one out there that wouldn't be a good fit. We haven't seen it yet, though. We've seen it work for healthcare adjacent things, like I talked about home health. We've seen it work for dental. We've seen it work for veterinary. It's really worked for a lot of different types of healthcare organizations, because at the end of the day, regardless of the type of organization, it's still accounting, and Intacct is really good at the core pieces of accounting. You still need to put out reports. You still need to track debits and credits. And so because it's built on a solid foundation, it does a really good job of managing just about any type of healthcare organization. There may be one it can't handle, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, it looks like the last question that we have in the chat is, can Intacct handle multiple or partial ownership?
It absolutely can. Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, but there is what's called advanced ownership consolidations, which basically gives it the ability to handle all different types of ownership models. So whether it's, and it doesn't need to be the same for each of those entities within the organization. It can handle a lot of different types, and then it aids in the consolidation. So if you need to split out multiple different types of consolidated reports for the different ownership interests, it has the ability to do that easily.
Right. So it looks like we don't have any other questions pending.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any other questions pending, then I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for your time. If anything on here looks like it would be of interest, stop sharing that real quick. If anything looks like it'd be of interest or could impact your business, we offer a free 1-hour consulting session to discuss further. Please reach out to info@randgroup.com or randgroup.com/contact. Mention that you attended this webinar to take advantage of that free hour consulting. And we'd love to get in deeper and help you see if Intacct could be a fit. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time.
Thank you again, Sean, for the great presentation. Thank you all for joining us. As a reminder, you'll receive a recording of the webinar via email shortly, but have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.